I am Hannah, 28 years old, and on what should have been the happiest day of my life, my parents abandoned me. They flew to Hawaii while I was preparing to walk down the aisle, leaving behind a box containing my wedding dress, burned to ashes, with a note that read, "Let's see how you get married now." Little did they know who my in-laws truly were, or the wedding I would still have despite their cruelty. Growing up in suburban Chicago, I always felt like I was walking on eggshells. My parents, Linda and Robert, were rigid perfectionists who micromanaged every aspect of my life, from the clothes I wore to the friends I made. Nothing ever escaped their criticism. Our modest 3-bedroom home looked perfect from the outside, meticulously clean, always presentable, but inside it was a museum of tension. My father, a bank manager, and my mother, an insurance clerk, weren't wealthy, but they obsessed over status. Every decision was about appearances. My younger sister, Audrey, 4 years younger, somehow lived under different rules. She was their golden child, the one who could do no wrong. If she brought home a B, it was still impressive. If I brought home an A-, it was, why not an A? The double standard was exhausting. But questioning it only made things worse. "Why can't you just be grateful for everything we've given you?" My mother would sigh whenever I tried to express myself. Their sacrifices became daily weapons, reminders of how indebted I was for simply existing. Every compliment was wrapped in guilt. When I was accepted to Northwestern University with a partial scholarship, instead of pride, my father remarked, "Well, if it had been a full ride, we wouldn't have to struggle so much to pay the rest." I had wanted to study art history, but they deemed it useless. So I chose marketing, a compromise between passion and approval. Still, my father questioned whether I was smart enough for business. Their voices haunted my head through college, the quiet, constant whisper that I was never enough. After graduation, I landed a job at a digital marketing firm in Chicago. Modest pay, but real potential. My parents' response, to compare me to my cousin James, an investment banker making 6 figures. Dating was another battlefield. Every man I brought home was dissected and dismissed. Thomas, my college boyfriend, wanted to be a teacher, not ambitious enough. David, who was career-driven, was too focused on work. I realized I could never win. By my mid-20s, I stopped telling them anything that mattered. I began therapy with Dr. Patel, who told me something that shook me. Your parents give conditional love, Hannah. Their affection is based on performance, not personhood. That sentence changed me. I started building distance. I moved farther away, limited dinners to twice a month, and surrounded myself with people who saw me, not my resume. But even as I thrived, a part of me still longed for their approval. It's hard to silence the voice of the child who keeps asking, "Am I good enough now?" Then came Alex. I met him at a charity gala for Chicago Children's Hospital. My firm had sponsored part of the event, so I was there on duty, smiling through small talk, sipping champagne, pretending to be engaged in conversations about marketing metrics. I was examining a table of silent auction items when a calm voice beside me said, "You look as bored as I feel." I turned, and there he was, a tall man with kind brown eyes and a warm, spleens, unpretentious smile. He wore a simple suit, nothing flashy, but carried himself with quiet confidence. "Is it that obvious?" I asked, laughing, only to another escape artist. He said, gesturing toward the handmade pottery we were pretending to admire. "I'm Alex." "Hannah," I replied, shaking his hand. We spent the rest of the evening talking not about business or status, but about life. He listened, really listened, and made me laugh more than I had in months. When he asked for my number at the end of the night, saying, "I'd like to see you again, minus the name tags," I said yes. Our first date was at a cozy Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park. He arrived in jeans and a button-down, driving a modest sedan. He told me he worked in his family business but didn't elaborate. And I didn't press. After years of watching my parents judge everyone by their paycheck, his humility was refreshing. Over the next months, I fell for him slowly, quietly, deeply. He was patient when I hesitated to talk about my family, never pushing. When I finally opened up, his reaction wasn't pity. It was empathy. "They missed out on knowing the amazing woman you are," he said simply. "That's their loss." 6 months later, I still hadn't introduced him to my parents. The thought terrified me. But then, on a weekend trip to Michigan, walking along the lake shore, he mentioned his family business. "My family owns Fisher & Sons," he said casually. I froze. Fisher & Sons, the jewelers, the ones with stores in New York and Chicago. He nodded, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Yeah, my great-grandfather started it in the 1922. My dad runs it now. I handle design and sourcing." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. He shrugged. "Because people act differently when they know. They either want something or assume I'm spoiled. I'd rather be judged as me." His words struck deep. For years, I'd been craving authenticity now. Here it was, standing in front of me. After a year together, I finally introduced him to my parents. The dinner was exactly what I feared. My parents interrogated him with polite cruelty, assuming he was a store clerk when he mentioned working for his family's jewelry company. My father even joked about retail not being a stable career. Alex smiled politely, never correcting them. On the way home, I apologized again and again. "Hannah," he said, squeezing my hand, "you're not responsible for their behavior. None of this changes how I feel about you." A year later, at a rooftop dinner at the Art Institute, he proposed with a ring he had designed himself, a platinum band with a flawless emerald-cut diamond, framed by tiny sapphires, my birthstone. "Hannah," he said, kneeling in front of me, "you've shown me what strength and grace really look like. Will you marry me?" I said yes through tears. When I called my parents, their reaction was painfully predictable. "Well," my mother said flatly, "I suppose congratulations are in order, though a year and a half isn't much time to really know someone." My father added, "Let's hope his retail job can support a family." I hung up trembling. But this time, something inside me didn't break. It hardened, because I finally understood their love had always been a transaction, and I was done paying the price. When Alex and I started planning the wedding, I wanted something elegant but heartfelt, a celebration of love, not a spectacle. We chose the Chicago Botanic Garden for its breathtaking serenity. The way the sunlight filtered through the glass pavilions and made everything glow like a living painting. Alex's parent, Catherine and James Fisher, offered to cover the costs as a wedding gift. Their kindness wasn't flashy. It came from genuine affection, from a sense of family I'd never truly known. "Your family now." "Hannah," Catherine said when I protested, "let us do this for you." But to my parents, generosity was an insult. "We can pay for our own daughter's wedding." My father snapped during dinner one night. Though his tone carried more pride than ability, I tried to explain that this wasn't about money, that the Fishers simply wanted to help. But every word I said became twisted. "So now you're embarrassed by us?" My mother accused. "Ashamed of where you come from?" I stared at her, speechless. I wanted her to see that my happiness didn't mean her failure. But in her eyes, everything was a competition. She was destined to lose. Every choice became an argument. The venue was too extravagant, the food too foreign. When I invited her to help me pick a dress, I hoped foolishly for a moment of peace. At the boutique, I found it a stunning A-line gown with delicate beadwork that shimmered like morning dew. I stepped out of the fitting room, heart pounding. waiting for her smile. Instead, she said loudly, $10,000. For a dress you'll wear once. That's obscene. Hannah, I raised you better than this. Her voice cut through the store. Every head turned. I felt the sting of humiliation burn through me as she folded her arms like a judge passing sentence. It's on sale, I whispered. My throat tight. Catherine said not to worry. Catherine again, she snapped. You care more about that woman's opinion than mine. The next weekend, Catherine took me dress shopping herself. She didn't lecture or shame. She simply smiled when I twirled in front of the mirror. You look beautiful. Hannah, she said softly. Alex won't be able to breathe when he sees you. That was what love was supposed to sound like. As the weeks passed, the difference between my two families became painfully clear. The Fishers included us in everything: dinners, laughter, little details about the ceremony. They treated me not as an outsider, but as a daughter. My parents grew more bitter. They nitpicked every update. When the rehearsal dinner came an elegant evening at a lakeside restaurant, I told myself I'd keep the peace. That night, Catherine looked radiant. Her arm hooked around mine as she introduced me to family friends. The Fishers had arranged thoughtful details, our favorite songs, framed photos from our relationship, even candles engraved with our initials. During his toast, James raised his glass and said warmly, "When Alex met Hannah, we knew he had found someone extraordinary. Tonight we don't just welcome her into our family, we thank her for making our son happier than we've ever seen him." The room glowed with sincerity. Then it was my father's turn. He stood, clearing his throat, and gave a thin smile that never reached his eyes. Hannah has always been a girl with big dreams, he began, sometimes too big for her own good. Laughter rippled uneasily around the room. But I suppose this time, her ambitions have paid off. His gaze lingered on Alex like a blade. She certainly landed on her feet. The silence that followed felt suffocating. I could feel the blood rush to my cheeks. The weight of every glance in the room. Alex squeezed my hand under the table, his thumb tracing small circles of reassurance. But I was trembling inside. Later, in their hotel room, I confronted them. How could you say that in front of everyone? My voice cracked. Do you really think I'm marrying him for money? My mother folded her arms. We're just concerned. You've always been impulsive. We don't want you swept away by all of this, she waved vaguely. Wealth. I'm 28 years old, I said, my voice shaking. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm marrying Alex because he loves me, because he sees me. Watch your tone. My father snapped. We're still your parents. Then act like it. The words burst out before I could stop them. Tomorrow is supposed to be the happiest day of my life. All I've ever wanted was for you to be happy for me. Just once. My mother's eyes flickered, but her voice stayed cold. Get some sleep. Everything will look better in the morning. It didn't. At dawn, I woke in my hotel suite overlooking Lake Michigan. The sunlight shimmered across the water like a promise. For the first time, I let myself believe the day would still be beautiful. Then my phone rang. It was my sister. Audrey. Hannah, she said quietly. I don't know how to tell you this, but Mom and Dad, they're gone. My stomach dropped. Gone where their hotel is only... They left, she said softly. They flew to Hawaii this morning. Dad booked it weeks ago. They said you made your choice, that you picked his family over ours. They wanted me to tell you they won't be at the wedding. The coffee cup slipped from my hand and shattered against the tile. No, I whispered. They wouldn't. Not today. Audrey hesitated. They left something at your apartment. The building manager called, said Dad was insistent. You get it this morning. By the time my bridesmaids arrived, I was on the bathroom floor, clutching my knees, shaking. Jess, my best friend, knelt beside me and called someone to retrieve the mysterious box. They've done cruel things before. I said through tears. But never this. An hour later, the package arrived. It was a large, plain box. My father's handwriting scrawled across the top. My stomach turned. "Do you want me to open it?" Jess asked gently. "No," I said. "I need to." I peeled the tape slowly. The smell hit me first acrid. Smoky. Wrong. Inside lay the ruins of my wedding dress. Charred and blackened. Beadwork melted into lumps of glassy ash. Pinned to the bodice was a note. "Let's see how you get married now. Maybe next time you'll remember where your loyalties should lie." For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. My world went silent. No voices. No air. Just a hollow ringing in my ears. "They burned it," I whispered finally. "They actually burned my dress." The room froze. Jess's eyes widened. Catherine, who had just arrived, covered her mouth with a trembling hand. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, dropping to her knees beside me. "This is unforgivable. But listen to me. They will not win. Not today." Her voice cut through the fog like a lifeline. She made one phone call to her friend Diane, who owned a high-end bridal boutique. Within an hour, assistants arrived at the hotel suite with several gowns. One, a Vera Vang creation, fit almost perfectly. The seamstress adjusted it on site as Catherine stroked my hair, whispering, "You are not alone in this. Hannah." When Alex called, and I told him what happened, his voice was tight with fury. "Whatever you want to do, postpone. Elope. Cancel. I'll support you," he said. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and said, "No, I'm marrying you today. I won't let them take this from us." By early afternoon, the chaos had turned to quiet determination. My makeup artist covered the evidence of tears. The new dress shimmered like a second chance. My bridesmaids gathered around me, forming a circle of warmth. But one question still lingered in my heart. "Who's going to walk me down the aisle?" I whispered. Catherine stepped forward, eyes kind. "James would be honored," she said softly. Tears welled in my eyes. I'd be honored too. The music began softly, a slow instrumental melody that seemed to rise and fall with my heartbeat. As the doors opened, sunlight spilled across the aisle like a blessing, and every guest turned to look. For a moment, he hesitated. My father should have been there. He should have been the one taking my arm, whispering reassurance the way I had dreamed of since childhood. But he wasn't. He was thousands of miles away, probably sipping cocktails on a Hawaiian beach. Proud of his cruelty, James stepped closer and offered his arm. "Ready." "Quito." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "As I'll ever be." The moment we began walking, a calm washed over me. The air was warm and fragrant, filled with roses and eucalyptus. Guests smiled through tears. Unaware of the private storm behind my steady steps, I could see Alex waiting at the altar, eyes locked on me, a tear tracing down his cheek. The love in his gaze steadied my trembling heart. When I reached him, James placed my hand in Alex's and whispered, "Take care of her." "Son." Alex's fingers closed around mine. "Always," he said, his voice thick. The ceremony blurred in a haze of emotion. Vows were exchanged through trembling smiles. Every word I spoke carried the weight of survival, not just love. But de fiance. 2. I choose you. I choose peace. I choose the life they tried to destroy. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the world erupted in applause. Catherine sobbed openly. My bridesmaids cheered. For the first time in my life, I felt unconditionally loved, not for being perfect, not for obeying rules, but for simply being me. That night, beneath the soft glow of lanterns, we danced barefoot on the grass. The trauma of the morning still lingered, but every laugh, every embrace, every toast layered over it like a bandage made of light. During the reception, Catherine approached with something in her hands. It was a small velvet box. Inside lay a delicate sapphire pendant. This belonged to Alex's grandmother. She said, "We've been saving it for the woman who'd truly understand family. And that's you." Tears filled my eyes. "Catherine, I don't know what to say." She smiled. "Say you'll keep shining, even when people try to dim your light." That night, Alex and I returned to our suite, exhausted and overwhelmed. My dress lay draped across a chair, like a symbol of rebirth, not the one my parents destroyed, but the one I chose for myself. In the quiet, Alex took my hands. "We'll build our own family," he said softly, "one that heals instead of hurts." And we did. Months passed. I changed my number, blocked my parents' emails, and moved on. Audrey called occasionally, torn between loyalty and shame. "They're furious you didn't apologize," she said once. "But they won't admit what they did was wrong." I hid. "They can stay angry forever if they want. I'm done living under their control." For the first time in my life, that sentence felt true. A year later, Alex and I bought a house outside the city sunlight streaming through wide windows. A garden full of lavender. The kind of peaceful home I had always imagined as a little girl. I started painting again. Something I'd abandoned long ago. Each canvas felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Then, one quiet Saturday morning, as I was brushing my hair in the kitchen mirror, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I ignored it, but it rang again. Then again, when I finally answered, Audrey's voice came through, trembling. "Hannah, Mom and Dad lost everything." "What do you mean?" "The house, the mortgage, the savings. Gone. Dad invested in some property scam. They're being sued. They need money, a lot of it. They said they're coming to talk to you." I froze. "They're what?" That evening, they showed up. No warning. No apology. Just desperation dressed in arrogance. My father's once confident posture was now bent with fatigue. My mother's face was drawn, her eyes red from crying. "Well," my father said stiffly, glancing around the living room, "you've done well for yourself. I built this." I replied quietly, "Without your help." He ignored that. "We're in trouble. Hannah, we need you to lend us enough to get back on our feet." "Lend," I repeated. "You burned my wedding dress. You abandoned me. You humiliated me in front of everyone I love. And now you're asking for a loan." My mother sniffled. "We were wrong. Okay, we thought we were protecting you. By setting my dress on fire." Her lip quivered. "We made a mistake. Don't punish us for it." I looked at them, two people who had spent decades wielding power over me, and felt a strange calm. The old me would have crumbled, guilted into helping them just to feel worthy. But that Hannah was gone. "You're not my responsibility anymore," I said softly. "You taught me that love is conditional. But real love doesn't demand obedience or repayment. It forgives. It grows. I found that kind of love, just not from you." My father's face hardened. "So that's it, you're just going to turn your back on your own parents?" I smiled faintly. "You did it first." He opened his mouth to argue, but Alex stepped in from the hallway. His presence quiet but commanding. "I think it's time you leave," he said gently. They hesitated, then left without another word. When the door closed, I let out a shaky breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peaceful. In the months that followed, I never heard from them again. Audrey told me they moved into a small apartment, living off what little savings they had left. Sometimes I wondered if they ever regretted what they'd done. But then I remembered something Dr. Patel once said: closure doesn't come from their apology. It comes from your peace. Years passed. Alex and I built a life filled with laughter. art, and morning coffee shared on the porch. When our daughter, Lily, was born, I held her in my arms and whispered, "You will never have to earn love." Sometimes, late at night, I think about that burned wedding dress. I used to see it as a symbol of loss of what my parents destroyed. Now, I see it differently. It was the fire that burned away everything false. The ashes didn't mark an ending. They marked the beginning of my real life. And in that life, love isn't a battlefield. It's a home.